All right. Welcome to another great episode of Framing New Heights. My name is Michael Hicks. I am the host with the most. I hope everybody is having a tremendous week. Super excited to jump into the topic for today. However, before I get into the podcast title today, here's a word from our sponsors. Are you ready to transform your life one step at a time? Well, at Live to Thrive, I believe in the power of small, consistent improvements. My unique framework focuses on becoming your best self. What that means is 1% better each day in mind, body, and soul. Here's exactly what I offer. The mind. We really fixate and work and hone in on the mind, where we develop what is called a growth mindset and enhance your mental clarity and conquer challenges with exuding confidence. Secondly, body. What I provide you with 3 published ebooks, workouts sent to your phone, where you get the opportunity to embrace a healthy lifestyle, boost your energy levels, and achieve your fitness goals. And lastly, but certainly not least, your soul. What I like to call is discover your true purpose. I do that and I help you cultivate your inner peace, your spiritual walk, and live a more fulfilling yet balanced lifestyle. And as a dedicated life coach of nearly 25 years, I will guide you in your journey to personal excellence, helping you overcome obstacles and reach for new heights. So together, we'll create a customized plan tailored to your unique aspirations. So don't forget, join Live to Thrive today and start living your best, true, purposeful life. You can contact me right now by scheduling a free consultation or applying for an opportunity to be one of my clients at www.livetothrive.com, or you can go to any one of my socials. Are you sick and tired of not getting good, adequate sleep? Like, it's constantly a battle, right? Like, you wake up, you have bad sleep. Well, I've got a product that I have been using for quite some time, and it's actually CBD oil. Does anybody have an idea what CBD oil does? Well, what it does, it allows you to get better, more fulfilling sleep. On top of that, it allows you to recover faster from workouts. And on top of that, if you're suffering from pain, anything like that, it really helps soothe that. So what you can do simply is go into the details of my bio today, and you can get up to 50% off the actual retail price just by putting in, once you go to that website, and that website is envitamins.com. Once you go in there, click on the CBD oil that you want, and then you put in the title code, or the code for it is called New Heights. All capitalized, all caps, New Heights. That gets you 50% off. Now's the time to act, because it's only for a limited time. All right, let's get into the goodies. You guys ready? You guys ready to have an awesome episode with me? And I want to say this before I continue. I'm coming up to a monumental number of 100 podcasts. I know, I cannot believe it myself. And I need your opinion on what to do. I believe this is going to be 98, I think. So I'm 2 away. I've got a couple interviews that I'm setting up, but I want your opinion. So if you could just go to my website, which is framingnewheights.com, and there's an email, you can send me some ideas and some topics. That would be greatly appreciated. All right, well, let's get right into today's topic. And this is a big one for me. What I'm about to give you guys today is a small version of my mindset piece of my Live to Thrive programming. And I'm super excited about it, to talk to you about it. So the title of today's podcast is The Words You Say Become Who You Are. And why that's so important, you guys, is when we are continuing to talk out loud or say certain things, and maybe some of you have seen some of my reels, our subconscious plays a huge role in who we are and who we surround ourselves with. It also can be stated as well as what you put in these 2 ears is who you also become. However, I'm going to really concentrate and hone in on today. The words you say that really come out of your mouth is who you become. I'm going to give you a crazy I think statistic, when we really think about it, did you know that about 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts come into our mind daily? And we can only be aware of like a small amount of them, you know? And after all, when those thoughts come into our heads, what immediately is our default mechanism? Our default mechanism is a negative self-judgment, right? It's constantly something negative that you've experienced or something negative that triggers that piece. So it's almost important that you almost replay your thoughts. And did you know that actually 95% of your thoughts are the same as a few months ago or a few days ago? Did you know that? And repetitiveness gives, how can I say this? Repetitiveness gives ideas immense power. All right. Stick with me on this because I'm going to get into some details here. When a new thought like crosses our mind, what our brain does, it stores it for short-term memory. And in that short-term memory, we are likely to do what? Forget it. So what this does then, what do you think it does? It leaves no impact whatsoever for us. So, however, if we return to it day after day, this notion will gradually establish new neutral networks to the brain. And I'm going to get a little brainy and science with you guys today on some stuff because I think it's really important on what I'm talking about on the message today. The mind doesn't filter judgments that reflect reality from ones caused by strong emotions. Instead, what it does, it perceives all ideas as true and forms new attitudes towards the world in response. Stick with me here. The worrying news, right? How many times, in fact, I was out last night my girlfriend had her birthday party. We're sitting at the table with some family, and somebody said to me, "Hey, did you see what happened in blah, 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 blah?" And I don't want to get too much detail into it. And I was like, no, I literally had no idea. Apparently, something happened. There was a shooting in a school system. I didn't know. No idea. Oblivious to that conversation. Couldn't even have it because news is worrying news. I don't care if it's Fox. I don't care if it's CNN. I don't care if it's ABC, NBC. I might get banned by saying some of this stuff. However, it's worry news. So can you imagine for a second how many harmful programs we acquire daily? So here's what I mean. Your drive to work. Are you listening to a news station? Or are you listening to a podcast that really lifts you up, brings you to a different level? Or maybe even sometimes this is what I do, you guys, is as I'm going out through my week, I love Life Church. And there's a few different areas that I listen to, but I stream a lot of the Life Church. There's a great pastor that I have, one here in locally, but there's one, I think he's in Oklahoma. I forgot what the guy's name was, Greg something. However, I just listen to his sermons and it provides so much value to me. There's days where I'll just have it on. And it doesn't have to be a Sunday for me to listen to that because truly what we listen to is a part of who we become. So I want to get back to this though. But what happens is our consequences. Let me retract here on what I said. So when we truly imagine the harmful programs that we bring into our ears daily, right? What we do, the consequences go far beyond a bad mood. They do. I mean, never ever did you ever watch something on the news and felt like joyful, right? Like exuded, hey, I'm going to go have a great day today. That's just not how it works. So our everyday reasoning shapes the evolution of our capabilities, the characters of others, and the states of affairs, etc. So when we start to perceive our skepticism as a norm after some time, there's actually statistics out there that you become more pessimistic and it can continue to steamroll. So let me give you a little framework here. So there's a term called negative self-talk disorder. How many of you are like, man, I know what that is? It's a real thing. It's how you talk to yourself. And are you talking negatively? And that's part of what my programming does. You have to really be aware of that. And I provide strategies to help you counter that. But it's a behavioral problem for many of us. And because it's still a behavioral problem, so many of us neglect it. That's the problem. And having overcome it, and when you have the ability to overcome it, I should say, there are so many beautiful, numerous benefits from it. Let me explain. All right. You have boost confidence. You have higher self-care. You are more organized. You're really fixated and focused on your specific goals. My girlfriend often says to me, she's like, hey, let's lay and snuggle. Sometimes that doesn't always work. I got to get up. I want to get up and I want to go. I got to do things. I got a day to start. I'm blessed to have another day. I've got content to do. I've got clients to reach out to. I've got a podcast to do. Whatever it may be, you really are, when you have this ability, you really can stay focused on your goals. And here's the other key, which I also do in my programming, which recently I've brought on more. But what this does is it really helps you with better relationships. And I have a relationship coach onto my business. We work on relationship strategies and techniques with couples and people. So if you're struggling with that, check out livethethrive.com, or you can go to my socials, hit the DM. There are limited spots for that. We only take specifics, so you would have to apply for that. However, so if you're ready, truly, you guys, to increase life's opportunities, it has to begin by changing your thoughts. And if you liked what I said right now, you don't need to turn the podcast off, because this episode is going to be so much for you. I'm ready to dive in. Here we go. Here's how to navigate self-talk and make sure that it doesn't govern your full attention in your daily life. So I want you to think of negative self-talk as a flashlight. All right. You guys with me so far? Flashlight. It lets you see only part of reality, and it makes our focal point that specific issue. So the principle works like this for a number of aspects throughout our life. So let's kind of dive into some character or some areas that really will help here. So when opportunity arises, imagine for a second, I'm just saying it general. I don't want you to fixate it on as a negative opportunity or a positive or a neutral. I don't, just stick with me here. When an opportunity arises, imagine what bonuses it will bring. First part. Or the second part, what risks does it have? When you purchase a house, there's risks to it, right? So here's the other piece. Listen to other people. Hold on. I know you're like, well, they all don't have great advice, Michael. I know. Just stick with me here. Notice the advantages and notice the flaws of their suggestions. Now, the other side to this is, how do you view the world? Do you view the world as a fantastic, beautiful, opportunistic place, or do you visit it as an unsafe place? Recently had a situation. The individual that I was talking to said, well, what if your daughter doesn't know Spanish and they got to go to the bathroom? Now, my immediate assumption was, is that person living in a society that thinks the world's unsafe, or are they living in a society where they think it's fantastic? That's a whole new different topic of a conversation. And here's the other piece that I want you guys to think about. Do you usually act on impulse to achieve something desirable, or do you avoid what you fear? Something to think about. Here's another perspective. Do you have ideas and passions, or are they problems that are usually topics of your conversations? Here's another one. Are you proud of positive qualities? Or do you mull things over with drawbacks? These simple things that I just gave to you guys is a simple mini test. And I bet some of you caught on what the second option was. Which one, when I said those, which one were you geared towards? Were you geared to the first? Or were you geared towards the ending, the last part? For example, I'll say this again. Here's the first part. The world is a fantastic place. Or the world is an unsafe place. So the second option indicates, are you ready for this? Influence of negative self-talk. True fact. I bet you're wondering, what do they all have in common? Well, they could somehow relate to failure. And it's this simple, y'all. I'm going to just break it down super simple for you. I like to use the acronym KISS. You talk about it, prevent it, expect it, or fear it. Those are your choices. It comes down to that simple perspective. Let's actually discuss some of these first options again, okay? So if part of reality, well, let me say that again. It's part of our reality we can miss due to negative self-talk, or even negatives before even self-talk happens. We can miss out on a lot of awesome opportunities just from our negative thoughts, because opportunities that we neglect, or maybe strengths we devalue, or goals we give up on, you have the capability to change that. If you say, oh my gosh, I'm 30 years old, it's done, man, your attitude needs a complete transformation. Speaking of your attitude, I want to give you a few crucial points about full transformation of attitude. I'm going to break it down for you. Number one, identify the sphere or area that suffers the most from negative self-talk. So what is it? Are you going to the gym and you keep looking at yourself in the mirror and you keep talking negatively about yourself? Is that one of it? Here's a really cool thing I'm about to give you guys, a really cool area to help you. I always like to say this, though. If you're not working with a coach, it's going to take you longer with this. However, what I like to do, especially with negative self-talk, is I like to narrow that gap for you. I bring it in so you can conquer this quick. You can definitely do this stuff on your own. It just takes a lot longer, especially if you don't know the how. So I want to go back to saying this for a second. So identify the sphere that suffers the most from negative self-talk. So, and then I want you to rate that from 1 to 10. The former means that you are pessimistic about the aspect and see no good points. And the latter signifies you are happy and positive about it. For example, let's talk about you. Appearance, physical and mental health, energy level, stress, apprehension, confidence. Here's another. Let's talk about skills. Your level of intellect, accomplishing your plans, coping with challenges. That's a huge one. In fact, Pastor just talked about that today on a sermon, and it was remarkable about that. Stay tuned if you follow me on socials, because I'm going to put a pretty cool reel about that. And not only coping with challenges, what are you doing for self-development? Here's another key piece. Your social life. How are your relationships? Your place on your career ladder? How about income? How about feeling you have a mission or a purpose, right? What about this? What about attitude? Your attitude, y'all, controls your life. You have a picture of the future and satisfaction of the actual welfare level that you're in? And when you put all these together, you can identify areas that you really need to, like the pastor said, is lean into today on his sermon, or you're going to see the other areas like as warning flags. things. Now, what's important is if you can use and prioritize and tackle the ones that you need to change, this is the key piece here. You'll be able to explore the roots of negative self-talk. And that's really what it's all about. Friends that are listening, high achievers that are listening to this podcast, how do you talk to yourself? Do you talk to yourself so negatively that you would never talk to your children or significant other like? Your subconscious has so much power over how you think. And when you constantly keep adapting and saying these things, how do you think your life is? How do you think it's full of optimistic? Do you live in a world of beautiful euphoria? Like, I get it though. I get it. Michael, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. I'm not saying it is, but our minds and what we bring into them and then what we say out really defines your negative self-talk. I want you to think about this for a minute here. Take time. This is so unique. Being in education for as long as I have, this is a great story that I'm about to share with you guys. Is you ever had that moment to just kind of sit back and watch a child's behavior? I would recently take little ones outside. They must be like K3, probably 3-year-olds. And now these 3-year-olds, they have no fears. None, right? They have no fears. They're so curious about the world. You could say the grass is blue. They would say yes. You could say the sky is green. They say yes. Maybe they view it as green. And if you were even to ask these little children why, you know what they'll answer you? Why not? Why not? Why can't we not see unicorns? Like literally, because, and then going back to that story, which I was about to share, is you have these little kids that they'll go on the playground, right? And they're like yay tall. They're up to my knees in height, right? And they'll go up to a platform that's maybe 4 times higher than them. And they'll jump. They have no fear. So I want you to think about a child's perspective. Where does it go away? Michael, I'm 51 years old. I'm not going to jump 3 times my height. I get it. I understand that. I don't think I would either. I think I could. But my point to all of this is they don't live in fear. They don't say why. They say why not. That's my whole point to that. And when you can get rid of that, and that takes work. That takes working with an effective coach to get rid of that. Because we're flooded with 80% of our thoughts are negative, especially if you have no training on how to counteract that. I want to jump into my next segment here. I want to talk about pessimism. All right. For many of us, pessimism is a very much a learned behavior. And it's really something we're really not born with. All right. Here's an alarming statistic. Did you know that kiddos, by the time from birth to 18 years old, they have heard that they will fail and it will not work and it will not go right 148,000 times. Think about that for a second. Because our society is so built on what you cannot do, what you're going to fail at. Steve Harvey, he used to tell his family that he was going to be an amazing, like one of the best comedians. They laughed at his face. Oh, you can't do that. How are you going to live, man? How are you going to live? That's the mentality that most average people have. And if you're truly listening to this podcast today, you don't want to be average. Don't be average. Do you want your kids to be average? Everyone's going to say no to that. And if you say yes, I'm okay with that, then you need to step into my office. We need to have a conversation, but you got to get on my schedule before we can do that. I thought that was kind of funny. All right, moving on. So I want to talk a little bit, continue talking about your childhood. As we're growing into the society, in this world that we live in, and children coming up, we soak up everything our parents, friends, and teachers tell us and show us. More importantly, show us. So what do you think happens to our identity? Kids, middle school is a perfect example, is they don't know who they are. They have no idea. They don't know who they are. Their critical thinking has not yet been developed. So now you go in, you maybe have a teacher showing a video about something on CNN to their students. Stick with me here. Whether it's CNN or Fox, it still has a propaganda. It still has a genre, a narrative. Teachers' opinions. I don't care what anybody says. They still give their opinions to students. And even if you tell them, this is just my opinion, we incorporate thoughts and ideas into their world. So what does that do about their critical thinking? So I want you to think about that for a second, because when we have that inner voice that can reinforce these judgments, it really allows us to realize that the principles and attempts to change them go with the flow, resigning to harmful thoughts. And when we're programming from others, is like the program that we receive from others is a crucial factor. And do you question it? And even when people have very self-aware families and friends, and they aren't protected from pessimistic thoughts, painful experiences are serious difficulties that can have a strong influence on us. And as a result, we may lose faith that something good awaits us, which may be the first indicator of quote unquote negative self-talk disorder. This level can be simply labeled what I call as beginner. And if you're a beginner, it has the following symptoms. Are you ready for this? So are you a beginner? Here it is. Unreasonable anxiety about the future. Woo! Right? Or feeling that someone cut the ground from underneath them. That victim mentality. Or better yet, complaining and criticizing more often than usual. They have fewer jokes, fewer smiles, so many doubts, including on positive outcomes or actions. And at this level, we feel unsettled and lost. However, we consider it temporary and atypical. And that's the stage when ideally we must take action, because harmful thoughts will accumulate and then they'll worsen the problem, especially if we don't know how to cope with them. Now, the second and third levels spring from replaying pessimistic ideas for a long time. Now, stop for a moment and think about the four aspects I just mentioned. All right? Consider one of them with the lowest scores. What judgments from others could influence them. Maybe something from their childhood or maybe their school life. Think about the phrases that have stuck in our minds since that time. Now, and on top of that, ask yourself, were there any recent events that triggered these specific attitudes? All right. I'm going to transition into my next segment here. When we begin to build on hateful thoughts, this is then our focus on how we live. Prove me wrong. Right now, if you think what I just said, email me, prove me wrong. I would love to debate this. Because over time, pessimistic thoughts take root in our minds, convincing us that they are the only possible way of thinking. On the second level of negative self-talk disorder, you can, in other words, let me say that this way. You are halfway to achieving this goal. The telling feature of this stage is a victim behavior. It means that people tend to do the following. So if you are a victim, what I'm about to tell you, if you don't think you're a victim, you're going to know right now. You feel illusionary helplessness. You have a shift responsibility of their lives to others and circumstances. And when you live this mentality, you assume that people must do something for you, right? You can do everything right in a relationship, in a whatever it may be. Maybe it's co-parenting. You can do everything right. However, if they have an illusionary helplessness feeling, or they are stuck about past circumstances, they will always have a negative thought pattern. And that, not only having that, really truly devalues who you should be. And those individuals also have the belief that everyone else is happier. So I'm going to ask you this question. Is that the way you want to think? The core notion in a victim's outlook is that the world is unfair and that you cannot change anything about it. That's insane to me. So the inner question, what's the point of putting forth effort? What's the point? Takes people over. They stop looking for the silver lining. And the following that I'm going to just mention will really help you recognize if you're in this. Are you waking up with a feeling of exhaustion? Or are you abandoning your social life and spending more time on your own? Are you concentrating on yourself and not listening to what others have to say? You got to be very careful about that piece, though, too, because not what everybody says is what you should be. Are you exaggerating your challenges, or are you focusing on obstacles, excuses, and drawbacks? Here's the key. You can still get out of it, because if you recognize that these habits, and then you recognize that they're habits, you can actually congratulate yourself on what, you may ask? Well, becoming aware of these attitudes. And then when you're aware of them, it will have less impact on your first step to overcome them. I want to talk about the third level of negative self-talk disorder. The answer to the simple question, what are the joyful moments of your life, would be challenging. You may ask why. Our memory closely relates to our emotional state and reminds us of moments when we had similar feelings. If people constantly feel low, disappointed, overshadowed by the amazing things, what do you think their outlook's going to be? Here's another telling feature. It's fatalistic outlook, when people believe their destiny is set in stone. If you stumbled on this podcast and you believe your destiny is set in stone, talk to me, man. Because you don't have to attempt to change anything. They feel that they don't have to do anything to change their life. That's discerning. That's alarming. Some other symptoms that this stage has is they have no faith in others or even themselves. They lack hope in cheerful changes. They rarely pay attention to other people's needs. They treat negative comments as realistic and positive ones as looking through rose-colored glasses. Therefore, pessimism becomes a mindset and justifies itself by disregarding optimistic views as wishful thinking. Consequently, people in this state may consider the correlation between our flow of ideas and quality of life ridiculous. How can our train of thought create or ruin opportunities? Ask yourself that question. I'll ask it again. How can your train of thoughts create or ruin opportunities? I can remember everyone saying, follow the science, Michael. You remember this time? Well, follow the science. Whether you were pro-COVID, not against COVID, doesn't matter. But you guys remember that, right? Follow the science. Well, I cannot come up with a better way to create a way to say that science provides the answer. It just does. I want to talk about our next segment. Do you want more positivity in your life? If that is you right now, raise your hand, say, yes, Michael, I want more positivity. Scream it wherever you are. If you're listening, if you're running, if you're walking, if you're in the car, scream it. Say, I want more positivity in my life. I'm going in on science because you wanted science, because we've got to follow science. Scientists used to treat positive thinking carefully. They needed more data and calculations to back up this correlation between optimism and life changes. Yet with the development of a term called neuropsychology, even the extreme skeptics changed their minds. Here's how it happens. Research showed that new repetitive input, like thoughts, words, or experience, makes the brain establish novel connections. Therefore, it's constantly changing. And I talked about this in a previous podcast. The term is called actually neuroplasticity. Okay? Now, when we discover this, it enables and copes with numerous problems, all the way from dyslexia of the brain damage. Or let me say that again. All the way from dyslexia to actual brain damage. And putting different input leads to, guess what? Various consequences or outcomes. As they did these experiments, it proved that neural networks of negative thoughts create wires into the right prefrontal cortex, right prefrontal cortex. All right. The part of the brain that accounts of the defensive behavior, right? It prompts you to either run away or fight. It's that fight or flight response. These processes are barely compatible with discovering opportunities to thrive. So positive thoughts, on the other hand, can strengthen connections in the left prefrontal cortex. Its goal is to search for solutions, alternatives, and better ways to deal with that specific problem. And then after you find these answers, it encourages us to take action, achieve that specific desired outcome. So I'm going to ask you a question. Do you have a pessimistic attitude? If you do, shut down chances. It'll shut them down. And if you actually do it, it shuts down those chances and provides positive ones that actually nurture them. Now, thoughts that occur the most, that affect our brains the hardest, when others cause our pessimistic attitude, the simplest way to limit listening to them. Let me break this down a little bit. You should increase the number of positive thoughts, making them the most potent messages our brain will take as input. About 90% of our inner programs that we hear are subconscious. We cannot tackle them individually. So here's what we need to do. You need to utilize the brain's neuroplasticity to treat the negativity self-talk disorder. So check this out. Crazy statistic. On today.com and self.com, they asked about 18,000 women whether they have a toxic friend. And how many of you would say, raise your hand right now if you have a toxic friend? So, well, they got the report back. They said 84% of them are speaking with someone who criticizes their work, doesn't listen to them, or expresses comments they deny the positive side of anything in the relationship. The common reason for keeping this relationship, you guys, what do you think it is? It's the fear of hurting someone else. And at the same time, none of them considered themselves toxic. Think about that for a second as well. So throughout this podcast, I bet you are asking, like, truly, how do I, Michael, just give me the bread and butter on how to stop these negative thoughts from happening. Here you go. If this is the part you wanted, I got you. When you teach and understand self-talk, and when you begin to embrace positive self-talk and you begin to counteract that, and here's how I'm going to wrap it up, the podcast today. When you can truly change harmful thoughts, or let's say challenge harmful thoughts, it will continue to help you take less time from really focusing on them. And the key to this inner transformation is replacing negative attitudes with positive ones. So check this out. Follow the science. Here we go. Self-Talk Institute found the best techniques for doing this by summing them up in a simple guide. And I'm going to give you the guide. They broke it down in 3 steps. Okay. The first one, and now if you have a chance, write this stuff down because this is really going to benefit you. The first one is to observe your thoughts and conversations for the next 30 days. All right. So whatever today is, do it for 30 days. I'm not asking you to record them 24 hours a day. I'm not asking 7 days a week. I'm not asking you to do that. But I just want you to pick a specific time during the course of the day. Maybe it's after you wake up, or maybe it's before you go to bed, or maybe when you're bored, or you're standing at the grocery store, or you're waiting for your cup of joe, or whatever it is, or maybe it's even the moments of heated discussion. Then think about the reaction to unpleasant news. Okay, stick with me. For example, a bad weather forecast. What do you do in that situation? Do you write it off? Do you embrace it? Do you like, oh my gosh, another bad weather? The principal purpose of the stage is the number one, be aware of it. And then when you're aware of it, restate your thoughts is the second step. And then when your inner voice, so when you have that inner voice that says, you don't deserve that promotion, here's what you need to say instead. Tell yourself, I have worked hard for it, or I can perform well in that new position. Even if you've never done these duties before, and you can formulate a novel statement that says, I know that is needed. It's not a white lie, y'all. you speak on behalf of the upgraded version of yourself. I like to envision myself 5 years from now. So I act that way. I feel that way. I move that way. Maybe I'm getting older then, maybe. But mentally, I like to vision that piece. And this step has like basically 2 goals to it. The first one is to avoid conceiving new harmful judgments. That's critical, y'all. The second one, it prevents them from regressing and turning into an actual outlook. And yet, when you restate them alone, that's not going to be good enough. So you got to stack them with something positive. So I've got here is the application piece. Do this 10 to 15 minutes each day. Talk positively about yourself. And when you increase positive input, we increase positive output. Creating positive input in our own by listening to programs that assist and acquire optimistic views. What are you aligned with? Are you aligned in fear? If you are, you watch news. If you're aligned in growth, you're listening to this podcast. If you're aligned in growth, you're reading a book, not just reading it, but learning to apply it. And when you pay attention to this type of form, you apply the wording to your positive self-talk. And then the narrator in itself, it's your inner narrator. And what that does is when you repeat it consistently, you develop what is called neutral networks, which then allows you to listen to and get new ideas, that those new ideas promote new habits. And then you feel the change even in the first week. Now, optimism. I want to go in on this a little bit. The benefit your family has from all of this is positive thinking. Your positive self-talk also assists those around you. That's because you are the source of input for your family, for your friends, for your colleagues. And from age 2, kids soaked up repeated judgments that basically base their own thoughts. And the more optimistic you are, I'm going to tell you this right now, be optimistic, because the more optimistic you are, the more confident and joyful your children will be. Don't live fearfully. Don't be that person that says, oh my gosh, you're sending them to a different country. But what if they don't know the language? What if they go to the bathroom and they don't know how to talk? Don't live that way. If you live that way, your children are doomed. Here's another piece. Your partner is critical too. It's important that you both are growing together. How are you changing those outcomes? And you can do it simply by listening to this podcast today, because there's programs out there. There are many of them. And when you are listening to a podcast like myself, Framing New Heights, thank you for listening, or whichever one it may be, why don't you listen to it and play it in the background when you're going for a drive? I was just recently on a podcast that I got interviewed for. I asked my daughter if I could play it. So we drove because we were headed to the pool and we had a little lengthy drive, and she heard Dad. So Dad, I do my very best. I fail miserably. I am a sinner just like everybody else, but I really want my daughter to hear what I'm doing, what I'm providing. And I want to tell you, y'all, it's possible to change. It's possible for your partner to change. And when you do this and you play it in the background, maybe you're playing it when you're driving, maybe you're doing it when you clean the house or when you're cooking together. Tell others that are in your life that they do not have to do it for themselves. And when your intentions of your heart are pure and your kiddos know that, your significant other knows that, you can then begin to develop optimistic ideas that become more powerful. And then when they're more powerful, you can really hone in on focus on those inside of that circle, inside your family. And we all are going to hear things, right? I cringe when I walk into a place and someone's got news on and I can hear it. I almost want to cover my ears because our brains consume practical information. And when they consume that information, it creates networks. So I really want you to challenge you as you're going about that. And I use a lot of I am statements to begin my day. And here's some ways that you can start your day to combat that negativity. You can begin by saying, I'm going to use I am statements on this. I am a quality person. I am worthwhile. I deserve to live my best life. I receive the best form of that life because of how I live. And now there's application to all of this as well, you guys. I'm just giving you nuggets. This is really detailed in my programming. But when you have these advantages of building these affluent affirmation programs, and if you not only do that with yourself, but you build that with your family, the wording of positive self-talk makes it so much more powerful in challenging our patterns. I'll never forget this. The first time my daughter had the opportunity to ride a bicycle, I took her to a parking lot, and she did this on her own, which I was about to say, but she also heard how dad talks to himself, right? And as she was riding her bicycle and I pushed her, and she couldn't go right away, but then I pushed her, she would say to herself, and I got this distinctively on video, is, "You can do it, Nola Pearl. You got this." She said that out loud. And that's because of the actions that I have as a father. And fathers have to lead. Fathers that are out there, you lead the family. You're like the head coach to the team. If your family's failing, you got to check yourself. So, affirmations. But in contrast, you also then have to influence your conscious judgments. And then as a result, that comfort that you have that's really short term will change over time. And all of these are if you want to know more about this application pieces, please check out and DM me with my Live to Thrive program. I can definitely help you. Now, when you make the change to better yourself or others, be aware of self-sabotaging tools. Our old programs want to come back and they want to go back, and you got the postponing. Instead of listening to something new, you go back to your old ways, right? Pornography. I'm just going to go out there. Pornography is something that if you were in that area and you did pornography, that is going to mess up your relationships. And, if you're going back to your old ways, you're tired the next day, right? But you keep watching 30 extra minutes of Netflix on TV. What are you doing? And on top of that, positive self-talk doesn't require believing in what we hear. Okay, so you've got to remember that. We press the play button and our brains will handle the rest. So I want to talk about this. Fear. You might be scared by a new version of yourself or the reaction of what's going to happen to people around you. Now think about the optimistic attitude that you may be able to change for your family, for your career, maybe new opportunities, new acquaintances, maybe even find new friends that'll make you more happy. And why should you maintain those relationships? Because it gives you the opportunity to focus on what is providing value for you. And as I conclude and wrap this up, difficulties and crises are parts of our life every day, you guys. And so are negative thoughts. And there's no need to blame yourself for having them. I'm going to tell you right now, because they're a natural response to our challenges. because we're all born with original sin. And I can go in depthly about that on a different podcast. But generally, that's what happens. Because whether you start to doubt optimism or consider the world unfair, accept that you have this specific state that you are in, the past now doesn't matter, you all. We rarely know the reason for previous choices or events. Your experiences may allow you to help other people be an incentive to eliminate self-imposing limits. Only time will tell. Thus, focus on the present and your decisions to change your thoughts. Follow these instructions to avoid procrastinations. Here we go. Identify the sphere that become a target for damaging ideas. Number 2, discover your level of negative self-talk disorder. Number 3, monitor what exactly you tell yourself. 4, rephrase pessimistic views into optimistic ones. And then 5, listen to positive input and establish new neural networks. Your brain is constantly learning, no matter at what age. Use the ability to pave the way for your future prosperity and inner balance. And remember, whatever harmful thoughts influence you, you never eradicate your true full potential. You can only hide your strengths by drawing attention to your flaws. So, negative thoughts are signs of numerous advantages you possess and will soon reveal. Here's the application piece, you guys, especially if you're a high achiever. Write them down because the podcast is about to end. Make listening to positive input a habit. Don't limit yourself to particular programs or podcasts. Learn from those who have already turned their negative experiences into optimistic stories. Maybe listen to a stand-up comedian who talk that you just laugh about all their failures. Work on the judgments for 3 months and then check your attitudes to different spheres of your life again. And friends, I truly hope that you enjoyed this podcast. And if you like it, please share it with 5 other friends. And if you really want to provide more value and input and be part of me, go to Framing New Heights. Give me the next topic for our 100th episode. That'd be truly appreciated. As always, 1% better in mind, body, and soul. And always stay flexed, you guys.